We're joined today by Valerie Fowler, the Product Manager for both AutoSys and dSeries, and Richard Kao, the Distinguished Solution Architect here at Broadcom. We're going to be talking about, as the title says, the plugin extensions for AutoSys and dSeries. But what I'll do to start with is I'll pass it over to Valerie to introduce the subject to start with. So Valerie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tony. As Tony mentioned, my name is Valerie Fowler. I am the product manager for AutoSys and dSeries, and I'm joined by my colleague, Rich Kao, a distinguished solution architect here at Broadcom. Today, we want to talk to you about the plugin extensions and how they can help you to extend the reach of your existing automation to various cloud-based technologies. So in today's session, I'll take a few minutes to explain why we created the plugin extensions, what problems are they fixing for IT operations, and which technologies that we support today. Richard will then demonstrate the plugin extension that has been built for the Azure Data Factory, commonly referred to as ADF. He'll be demoing this for both AutoSys and dSeries. Because we use common technology across our CA workload automation solutions, this same plugin extension can be used also with ESP and CA7 workload automation solutions on the mainframe. So we're also, we'll talk about how you can get the required materials to start using this plugin technology today in your own environment. We're going to run a really quick poll with a couple of questions. We're interested in finding out what other technologies you would like to see us build an integration with. You know, of course, no promises that we can deliver the specific one that you might ask for, but the poll will provide useful input into our decision-making for the future. And then we'll have an open Q&A session at the end. Now, remember to open the Q&A panel on the WebEx event to enter your questions, and you can do this at any time throughout the session, but we will wait to answer any questions at the very end. Why has this plugin work been prioritized for us? Simply put, it has been a priority because it has been driven by you, our valued customers. You know, through discussions over the past couple of years, it became apparent that people were struggling to incorporate new cloud-based applications into their scheduling environment. The plugin extension mechanism was created to easily expand the applications that you can have under the control of your CA workload automation. And the reason that you're asking for these applications is due to the changes that you are trying to navigate in your organization. You know, most of you will probably agree that the landscape is shifting significantly for IT operations. Not only is everyone adopting the cloud, but it's becoming the norm for organizations to adopt a multi-cloud strategy. Now, according to Gartner, 81% of companies are using at least 2 or more distinct cloud providers. Things like capabilities, performance, price, these are all drivers for these decisions being made. But another reason that companies may work with multi-cloud vendors is driven by their enterprise business capability strategy, or EBC. You know, and for a time, the EBC strategy was referenced as the postmodern ERP trend. And what does this mean exactly? Well, many companies are leaving their monolithic legacy ERP, and they're moving back to less integrated tools. They can still be using a core ERP, but instead of using it for everything, they're adopting additional software as a service solutions like, you know, Salesforce, ServiceNow, Workday, Tableau, and many others. And this type of software application strategy makes the need for having a strong orchestration solution, you know, to automate processing and data flow all that more critical to your business. And interestingly, again from Gartner, they highlight that companies that do not think about the orchestration of service across their hybrid application estate will struggle to support their business's digital transformation. So digital transformation has or is happening, and as the landscape is changing, the need to integrate with new applications and services continues. And how is this impacting, you know, your automation? As you start looking at these various cloud platforms and applications, you'll notice that many of them provide some type of scheduling component, which, initially, sounds pretty good. You might hear of things like Airflow, AWS Batch, Google Composer, as well as scheduling capabilities that are built into specific applications. But when you start looking more closely, you find that these solutions are extremely basic. As a matter of fact, most of them will self-identify as being cron-like schedulers when you read their, published literature. Not only are the capabilities simplistic and some might say, woefully lacking, many of them are designed specifically for a single application or a platform and do not allow you to easily orchestrate any integration or dependencies between the things across your enterprise. You end up with a bunch of point solutions. And it's not uncommon for an application developer to want to use the capabilities that have been purpose-built for the solution that they are responsible for. This is, a natural tendency, and chances are that they may not recognize the deficiencies. Anyway, not until they try to turn the application processing over to production. And this is where the real challenges become apparent. So what is the impact of implementing these disparate solutions? Well, EMA, one of the leading industry analysts, undertook a large industry-wide survey, of which, by the way, you can get a copy of this report from our website. And what it showed was that over half of the respondents said that they are using a mix of automation tools today. And this creates challenges for gaining end-to-end control of the processes that are being managed. Even if some portion of the processes are automated, they still have manual synchronizations, manual handovers, built-in buffers to help ensure dependency requirements, and have to create and maintain a lot of extra coding to build those necessary bridges between applications and environments. And as a result, they experience a higher rate of failure, and the lack of visibility and control impacts their agility. Nearly half reported that this mode impacted their ability to run operations and deliver services as they move to these modern strategies. 38% even went as far to say they were not meeting the required outcome goals for their digital transformation. The outcome from this survey showed that 4 in 5 respondents said that losing the centralized visibility and control was the reason that they needed to get that back. And it's interesting to see that how we continue to repeat the mistakes of the past. For those of you that have been in the industry for a while, you will remember that back in the day, the reason that organizations moved to an enterprise scheduling or an enterprise workload automation solution was to get this central view and control over business processing. But somehow during the rush to the cloud and through the digital transformation, these capabilities are now being sacrificed. We created these plugin extensions, and it allows your enterprise automation solution, the one that you're relying heavily on today to run your business, to incorporate these cloud-based technologies that are at the forefront of your digital transformation. It allows people to maintain that visibility, to clearly establish the dependencies between different applications and or different platforms. And it means that you can leverage the same security and audit systems that have been relied upon for years. But more importantly, it provides the same advanced automation capabilities. I'm talking about those ones with which you've kind of built your operational success on. And it allows you to take all of this to the cloud. These are those, capabilities that we have all kind of taken for granted as basic functionality, things like maintaining that operational control with abilities that allow us to easily put things on hold or on ice, easily managing dependencies, restart capabilities, advanced calendaring, alerting system for SLA delivery, just to name a few. With one place to focus on, your enterprise automation solution can deliver a better service, can reduce the cost to operate the environment, and shorten the time to recover from the abnormal. And also, it allows you to embrace whatever the next new thing's going to be just a whole lot faster. So here we have a list of what is available that you can get a copy of and start using today. These plugins have been built using existing technology, and this is technology that all of you are running currently. They're installed on top of our existing application services plugin, which has been around for many years, and many of you already have it in use. There's no lengthy upgrade project that's required, which is a huge plus for everyone. And as I mentioned earlier, because of the shared technology, this same extension will work with any of our 4 workload automation enterprise solutions. And for licensing, you will require an agent license for the application services plugin if you don't already have one. So I would like to turn it over now to Rich Kao. Just a quick introduction for those that don't know Rich. Rich is a distinguished solution architect, and he's a veteran at CA Broadcom. He's worked on numerous products and projects over his tenure here, and he's extremely well versed in the workload automation space. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Rich now so that he can demonstrate how one of these plugin extensions works for us. And he's going to show it both in AutoSys and dSeries. So Rich, go ahead.
Thank you, Valerie. So the first demonstration I'm going to show is running the ADF, running a couple of different job types in AutoSys first, and then I will show the exact same jobs running in dSeries. So a little bit about the jobs. So right now we have the ability to run ADF pipelines, and we can execute them and monitor them to completion. So here you'll see I have a couple of jobs defined. And the last 2 are to show what different failure scenarios, or what happens when there's errors in the pipeline or the pipeline fails. But the first 2 are showing when it runs to success. So if you look at this job definition, it basically is the plugin extension is installed into the agent, and it's exposed using what's known as the POJO job type. And this job type has existed probably since ever since the system agent was introduced into the scheduling engines. And so it takes in a bunch of parameters that you fill in, and these parameters are about how to connect and credentials that are required to log into the system. So in this particular case here, I'm running it in an ADF resource that's running inside of Azure, and I'm calling this pipeline here with these parameters. So this pipeline takes 2 parameters. So this pipeline 2 parameters is the name of the pipeline in ADF. So if I jump over to ADF, we can see right here that this is the pipeline that's going to be executed. So it's basically just a 2-step, 2-activity pipeline, of which takes in some parameters. So it takes in parameters URL and URL1. So if you looked at the definition of this, you will see here, this is where it's bringing in the URL parameter for the first activity, and the second activity brings in URL1. So what I'm going to do now is I will kick this off, and when I start the job, we will see it start executing over here. So I will start this job first, and I'm just going to kick them off manually, so I won't start the box. So I will manually kick this off so we can see what happens in the back end. So when I force start this job, we will see it start running here. And if we go over here, we will see it running here. So here's the pipeline running, and basically it will stay running over here until the pipeline finishes executing. So now it's completed, and over here we will see the job go to completion. So it went to completion. So that's passing in a parameter, 2 parameters, and then this one is a very similar job, and it basically just takes in, it doesn't use no parameters. So this is just a copy pipeline job, and what this job does is this one is doing a blob copy. So it's just a single activity blob copy, no parameters. So when I force start this job, we will see the job executing over here in the monitor again. And it just finished, it already finished. So here you can see that we put a dependency on two separate pipelines. So we can create dependencies on pipelines and then monitor them. So this next one here is showing a failure. So when this job runs, we will see it fail. So this job is running, and the failure that I introduced in here is related to the parameters. So it's missing the second parameter, and this job requires two parameters. So once this actually goes into failure, so it's been marked as a failure, and over here we'll see it also go to failure. And we can retrieve spool on any of these jobs. So if I look at the spool file here, so we can see what actually happened. So here it's submitting the request, just getting some it's retrying to verify the status. And then here you'll see it failed, and it says operation on target web 2 failed, missing target URL. So what that actually means is that because I didn't provide the second parameter, this job will fail here because this one here requires this URL here. So this is what the parameter is missing. And in here, we can see a little bit as well. It says the exact same thing. Operation but on target web 2 failed, missing target URL. It's the exact same error we see in the spool file. The last job here is also a failure, but this one also shows that I'm doing a the standard failure transition. So so that's why this will execute. So you can use all the capabilities of your scheduling engine that you've always been used to. So this one here fails because I forgot what the reason was this one fails, but let me just kick it off. And refresh this. So this one failed here. Oh, it was the same thing, missing target URL. So it's the exact same failure, and we would see the exact same failure inside of here. And same thing here, missing target URL. So that's our capabilities that we have with ADF currently. Now switching over to a dSeries environment. This is the same job flow that we had in AutoSys, except it's been done in dSeries. So I can kick this off as well. And if I catch it quick enough, I can put the hold on the second job. I'm gonna try to hold this so it won't, see if I can, oh, it's already too late. So it already executed. But what this will show is that it will show it's the same execution. If we jump over here, we'll see that the jobs are executing. So here's the the jobs that I just kicked off right here. And another job just kicked off. And then the last two, it should be in the failure ones. Oops. Yeah, so these two will fail just like the other ones. And this one also has a failure successor, so it will go to the next job and execute. And in here, you'll see the two failed. So they both failed, missing target URL. And this one here is failing because of an invalid URL definition. So what that means is that this one here failed because of a URL and was invalid. So if I say reset definition, if you look at the parameters here, you can see I put it, this is invalid. XXX is not a valid URL. So that's why it failed, because the HTTP request would fail. So you can actually see some stuff in here. So like, for example, for the failure one, this is called parameters pipeline failed. So just like in AutoSys, we can view the output in dSeries desktop client. Now this requires a patch to be applied to your desktop client to display this. So here it says remote name could not be resolved XXX. So that's basically the error that was being shown. So here you'll see stuff about the execution, stuff going on in here. So here you see the parameters, here you see we're submitting the requests, and then you'll see here where it says that it failed. And the other job failed because of that URL. So if I get the job name for that one, pipeline 2 parameters failed, and I switch that here. Do search. So here you'll see again that missing target URL is the error message that was happening. And again, you can see the details of the execution in the retries. So this one shows a little bit more detail because it has the log level set to debug level. So at debug level, it actually gives you a little bit more information about what's going on. And that's controlled based on the job definition. So in the job definition, these last couple of parameters, this here is the debug level. So, this one here is the, the endpoint. This is the OAuth2 endpoint login to obtain the token, the client ID, the client secret. This is the resource name in ADF. This is the ADF resource, the ADF factory, the name of the pipeline, the parameters, if any. This is how many times to, check the status. This is the wait time between the statuses. And this one here is a failover threshold. And what the failover threshold is that sometimes, with these cloud environments, they may claim, 5 nines of uptime. And what 5 nines of uptime equates to a couple of minutes worth of downtime, right? And it can be a second, it can be a microsecond, a millisecond. But if we happen to hit the API at that time and the API is down because it's doing a quick failover to another cluster or something like that on the APIs, it will get a failure. So what this allows us to do is to say, ignore that failure, try again, and you have up to the time specified here in seconds. So this is 60 seconds. So it can sustain a minute of downtime where the API is not available. And if it recovers in a minute where we keep retrying for a minute and it recovers, then it will continue on and continue processing. It won't fail the job. So that's all I really have for the ADF stuff. So I can switch it back over to Valerie. Okay.
Thank you, Rich. Appreciate that. So obviously we didn't have time to show you a demo of all of the extension plugins that we are currently supporting, but we have asked Rich to do some recordings for us. So you will find that he's already started doing recordings for some of the other plugins, and you'll be able to view those. And most of them are, 10 minutes or less, around that 10-minute mark. So it's easy to go out and take a look at, for example, the OpenShift one. How does that work? And also, if you're interested in actually testing out any of these in your own environment, we ask that you raise a support ticket, and we will attach the software to that support ticket for you to get access to. You'll find that in that package that you'll receive, there's documentation. That documentation not only shows you how to do the install, but you'll see some examples of some definitions that have been done. And then hopefully through Rich's demo, you've got a good idea that as with all of the other job types that we have, it's the same look and feel, regardless of the type of work that's actually being scheduled by the enterprise solution. So same thing with the plugin extensions. You're just extending the capabilities and taking all the, that feature-rich enterprise solution that you have today, and being able to extend all of those features to, the Databricks workload, for example, or Airflow or Workday. And you'll also find that, the plugins, we showed the Azure Data Factory one today, but all the plugins have the same look and feel. They're reaching different endpoints and managing different types of work, but the look and feel of how they're installed, how you define the jobs themselves and manage them are all the same.
Move on. We're going to move on to the questions. I'll act as the host here and start fielding the questions, and we'll see if we've got answers to all of them. So the first question is, how easy is it to install these plugin extensions? How long is a piece of string question? So Rich, could you answer that one, please?
Yeah, so basically the plugin extension is delivered in a zip file, and it basically consists of a series of jar files. So what you would normally do is that you would just take those jar files from the zip file, and copy them in the agents directory. There's a jars directory, and underneath the jars directory, there's an ext directory, and you basically just copy the jar files into there and restart the agent. And at that point, the agent will load it in, and you can just start defining the jobs.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that indeed. So the next question that we have is, can the ADF extension plugin support certificate authentication?
So I'm not sure about the certificate authentication because the ADF implementation currently supports the tokens that you can define from ADF Active Directory, or it can actually use credentials to get a token from ADF. I'm not 100% sure if the ADF APIs support certificate authentication. All the plugin extensions that are there utilizes public APIs, REST APIs or SOAP APIs that are published by these different vendors. And we use those APIs to manipulate the system. So the authentication that's being used is highly driven by the applications themselves, because ADF, it goes through ADF Active Directory, and we have to authenticate with ADF Active Directory. So actually, when you go into ADF and define your accounts, we actually have to, you go into ADF Active Directory inside of Azure, and that's where the tokens are actually defined. That's where you get the client secret and the client ID. It's generated when you create it in your account, so it has to be created as like an application ID. So I'm not 100% sure if ADF supports certificates. This is the first I've heard of it. So I would have to look at it if there is such a thing. I know some of them we do support some kind of certificates, like with Google Cloud. So the Google Cloud authentication has a certificate. Same thing with Amazon. Amazon has something called a certificate key that has to be used when you call their REST APIs. So it all depends on the vendor.
I understand the Airflow plugin does not support token authentication. Is that planned? And if so, when?
So Airflow out of the box directly from Apache, meaning the open source Airflow, it does not support tokens at all. So we support whatever Apache Airflow supports. However, if you are using Amazon's version of Airflow or Google's version of Airflow, Amazon's Airflow is called MWAA, and Google's version of Airflow is called Composer. Both of those we support tokens on that. Unless Airflow, because the token stuff is very proprietary if you try to front end it. So like if you're front ending it with another system, meaning that you disable the Airflow's built-in security and then you front end it with your own third party, API front ender, we would need to know exactly what type of tokens you're generating, how the tokens is generated, what kind of IDP you're using, all that kind of stuff, because how you interact with all these different IDPs is different. So that would be a more of a custom kind of thing that we would need to look at.
So we've, Rich, you've been let go because we've finished all of our questions now. So I'd like to thank both Rich.
I think we missed one, right? Is it the one about how do you insert a security token value into a POJO job at runtime? We need to query CyberArk at runtime and avoid exposing secrets using for authentication.
Oh, that's handy. I can't even see that question. So please, if you can see it, read it out and answer it.
So a general POJO question, how do you insert a security token value into the POJO job at runtime? We need to query CyberArk at runtime and avoid exposing the secrets used for authentication. I know, Valerie, I know that CyberArk is on the list to add to AutoSys Secure. Once that is done, you would be able to do a variable substitution into there. So like once we have there's a new feature coming in the next release of AutoSys to support security variable substitution, in which case in the job definition, you would put a substitution variable in there. And at runtime, when the job goes to execute is when it gets populated, and that will pull it from AutoSys Secure, we're adding CyberArk support to AutoSys Secure as the first vault, in addition to, we already added IAM vault, which is our own vault, but we're currently adding CyberArk into AutoSys Secure so that you will be able to define your credentials in CyberArk, where AutoSys Secure can access the credentials from CyberArk, and the schedule will then be able to pull the values and substitute them in at runtime.
So with that, I believe we've reached the end. So I'd like to thank you, Richard and Valerie, for presenting on the plugin extensions available for CA workload automation. Specifically, we talked about AutoSys and dSeries, but as we mentioned, they cover also ESP and CA7 from the mainframe. I hope you, the audience, have found it useful and are excited about what you might be able to do in the future. But for now, thank you very much for attending and enjoy the rest of your day.